So, at the behest of one of my viewers, who, quote, does not want to miss anything, instead of finishing chapter 5, I'm going to read what was actually contained in chapter 3. And, I hope my current sobriety state will, help me read this a little better than the first time when I was just staring at it horrified. So, have witness to see. Okay. So, I'm putting this in the playlist, like, after the video that's a horrified summary of this novel, so I don't have to do the context of what's going on. But if you are interested in seeing the beginning of Chapter 3, it's Chapter 3 Part 1, which is on my channel. What other channel would it be on? Alright, so the last lines of that video were, "My mistress now revealed herself to be a perfection, an object of unconquerable adoration." But let's continue. "The lush mink was denied forever to my lustful scamperings. Should I even contemplate such impudence? And when I next bared myself for her chastisement, and she called me filth and worm and such like, I should have the giddy, morbid satisfaction of knowing she really meant it, and that any flicker of affection on her part could not be remotely involved in her interest in my person. It was my squirming and my pain which interested her, and nothing else. And at this electric thought, I felt as though my balls would spurt right there. I watched Dido unpack her bags. She withdrew rolls of gauze and bandages, and several thin wood splints. A large syringe. Oh, God, now I remember what goes on in this. A large syringe attached to an enormous translucent rubber bulb, like a pear. Attached. And finally her bamboo pole. I'm actually reading this. She ordered Miss Florence to clear her bed, and as my mistress dawdled, folding her things neatly, she hissed and called her bitch, and Miss Florence petulantly brushed all her clothes in a heap to the floor by the window. Not a good move, honey. Then she had to lie down on her back with her arms and legs stretched out, so that I had a vision of her beautiful cou's petals, spread to show the glistening pink flesh within, as though for my eyes, for your eyes only. I don't know how that song goes. I apologize profusely. Dido proceeded to place a splint along her left leg and bind it tightly in thick bandage, all the way up to the moist, swollen quim lips. It was evident that her treatment by a nurse excited my mistress. Dido bound her foot as well, and then repeated the procedure with the right foot and leg, licking her lips as she worked. She splinted and bound the arms and the shoulders down to the teats with a corset of vivid pink. Slash between the two white mounds of bandage. Miss Florence was unable to move her arms at all, and her legs only stiffly, like a broken marionette. Dido grinned in satisfaction at her work, then picked her up like a doll and flopped her over on her belly. She must be really light. Either that or this book is complete bullshit. Her trussed limbs twitched helplessly. Dido pulled her feet away from the bed so that her legs hung over the floor, quivering about a foot from the carpet. Then she fetched a long leather thong and bound both ankles, pulling them down and lashing them to the feet of the bed, and ignoring Miss Florence's squeals of pain muffled by the pillow into which her face was pressed. Her thighs were splayed wide. With her furrow and coos open to my view, I looked in awe at the thickness of her mink and lush curly hairs ascending from anus to coos in an unbroken forest. Dido took her syringe and filled the rubber bulb with hot water from the tap at the pretty porcelain sink. Then she added a phial of purple liquid to the water in the bulb and set the device aside on the Jacobean oak sideboard for the purple to suffuse. Without warning. Without warning, she plunged her hand deep into Miss Florence's crevasse from behind, and the trussed body jerked as Dido began a vigorous rubbing of her quim lips. She put 2, then 3 fingers inside Miss Florence's gash, and twisted her hand so that her thumb frotted the clitty. Miss Florence squealed in shame and discomfort, but her buttocks tightened and pressed on Dido's probing hand as though to make her frot harder. Abruptly, Dido ceased her frottage, to a moan of dismay from Miss Florence, and applied her wet fingers to the nozzle of the syringe until it shone moist with Miss Florence's juices. Pity the young man of yours didn't attend to you properly in coos, Dido said roughly. Her words were cut short as she parted her fesses and thrust the glistening tube into her anus, to her very root, and causing Miss Florence to wriggle and shriek in anguish. Her splints. I'm sorry, I lost my part on the page. Her splints cracked and clattered at the writhing of her body. Then Dido filled the bulb and squeezed. There were bubbles and a rushing sound as the fluid was injected into Miss Florence's anus shaft. She lay coughing and groaning, with little hiccuping sobs, until Dido said she could evacuate. Miss Florence strained. There was a hissing noise as her belly and buttocks writhed. And the bulb was filled again in thick purple spurts from her bumhole. What kind of pleasure do you get out of something like that? I mean, this playlist has been renamed Summer Kink Shames in an entire novel, and I'm gonna live up to that, especially in this chapter. So, we're gonna continue with the bubbles coming from her anus shaft in a nice, pretty purple.